Hello everyone. I hope you enjoy listening to the story. My name is Victoria Ann Hayes, and I am 30 years old. I stand in court, asking for the maximum sentence for the two people who once called themselves my parents. My voice is steady, colder than I expected, each word landing with the kind of precision I spent years learning to control. They sit across the room, stiff, defensive, dressed in borrowed dignity that no longer fits. My mother keeps her chin high, the same way she used to when she told me pain was necessary. My father avoids my eyes, as if silence can still protect him. Neither of them recognizes me. Not yet. The courtroom smells faintly of old wood and tension. Papers shuffle. A pen clicks somewhere behind me. The judge watches closely, but I can feel it. Every breath in this room is waiting for me to finish what I started the moment I accepted this case. I adjust the file in my hands, thick with evidence, years of quiet collection hidden behind legal language and signatures. 20 years. Let that sink in. 20 years of building something they never imagined would exist. I look at them again, really look this time. Age has softened their edges, but not enough to erase what they did. My mother's hands are folded tightly in her lap, the same hands that once locked a door and called it discipline. My father's shoulders are tense, like he is bracing for impact, though he still does not understand where it will come from. They think this is just another case, another misunderstanding, another child exaggerating. They always believed that. I take a slow breath and begin outlining the pattern of abuse, each detail placed carefully, like pieces on a board they use to control. Isolation, deprivation, psychological manipulation, disguised as character building. I do not rush. I want them to hear it. I want them to feel the weight of every word the way I felt every night I stared at a locked door, wondering if this was what love was supposed to look like. The prosecutor's table is silent except for my voice, calm and deliberate. A flicker of irritation crosses my mother's face. I recognize it instantly. That look used to come right before she said something that would twist reality until I doubted my own memory. I almost smile, but I stop myself. Not yet.
There is a rhythm to this.
A structure. Just like they taught me. They trained me to endure, to observe, to wait. They thought they were building strength. They were building something far more dangerous. The judge asks me to proceed. I nod, stepping forward, closing the distance between who I was and who I have become. My pulse is steady now, controlled. Every second of this moment has been earned. They have no idea that I have been preparing for this long before this case ever reached the court. They have no idea that every word I speak is not just argument, but memory sharpened into evidence. If you were sitting where I stand right now, looking at the people who broke you and called it love, what would you do? Would you hesitate? Or would you make sure they finally understand? I used to believe them. That is the part that still sits heavy in my chest if I let it. When you are a child, you do not question the rules that shape your world. You accept them. You adapt. You survive inside them because you have no other choice. My mother would stand in the doorway with her arms crossed, her shadow stretching across the floor like a warning, and say the same thing every time she locked me inside that room. This is discipline. You will thank us one day. I remember nodding once, actually nodding, as if agreement could make the darkness easier to breathe in. I was 10 years old. The room had no windows, just a thin mattress on the floor and a light bulb that flickered when it felt like it. Sometimes they left it on. Sometimes they did not. That was part of the lesson, they said. To build resilience. To teach me not to depend on comfort. I learned how to measure time by the sound of footsteps outside the door, by the rhythm of my own breathing, by the ache in my stomach when food did not come. At first, I cried. I begged. I promised to be better, without even knowing what better meant. After a while, I stopped. Silence became safer. Silence became survival. My father handled things differently. He believed in absence. When he was disappointed, he simply erased himself. No words. No eye contact. Days would pass where he moved through the house like I did not exist. You would be surprised how quickly a child learns that being ignored can hurt more than being hit. I would follow him once, just once, asking what I did wrong. He did not stop walking. He just said, "You will figure it out if you are smart enough." That sentence stayed with me longer than any punishment. It turned every mistake into a puzzle with no solution. They called it structure. They called it preparing me for the real world. But the real world did not lock children in rooms or starve them for making noise at dinner. The real world did not tell you that love had to be earned through suffering.
I did not understand that back then.
I thought maybe other families were like this too, just better at hiding it. I thought maybe I was the problem. That was the most dangerous part. When abuse wears the mask of guidance, it teaches you to blame yourself for everything. There were moments that should have broken the illusion earlier. Small cracks that I ignored because I needed something to hold on to, like the time I fainted at school. I had not eaten in almost 2 days because my mother said I needed to learn self-control. The nurse asked me when my last meal was. I lied. I said I forgot. Even then, I was protecting them. Even then, I thought loyalty meant silence. Looking back, that is the part that makes my jaw tighten. Not what they did, but how well they trained me to accept it. The night everything changed started like any other. I made a mistake. Something small. I dropped a glass in the kitchen, and it shattered across the tile. The sound echoed through the house, sharp and unforgiving. My mother turned slowly, her expression already decided. My father did not say a word. He just watched. I started apologizing immediately, my voice shaking, my hands trembling as I tried to clean it up. I cut my finger on one of the pieces, and the blood spread quickly, bright against the floor. I remember thinking that maybe if they saw that, they would stop. They did not. That night, they did not lock me in the room. They did something different. My mother handed me a bag. Not big. Just enough to carry a few things. Clothes. Nothing else. My father finally spoke, his voice calm, almost bored.
You are old enough now.
If you cannot follow simple rules, you can learn the hard way. I did not understand at first. I thought it was another lesson. Another test. I stood there waiting for the rest of the instructions. They never came. The front door opened. Cold air rushed in, biting real. My mother pointed outside like she was directing me to take out the trash.
Go.
I remember asking one question. Just one. When can I come back? She looked at me, really looked at me, and said something that still echoes in my head even now. When you deserve it. Then she closed the door. I stood there for a long time, maybe minutes, maybe longer. Time felt different out there. There was no structure to hold it together anymore. Just the sound of cars passing, distant voices. The weight of everything I did not understand pressing down on me. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Nothing. The house stayed silent, like it had already moved on without me. That was the night I learned what abandonment feels like. Not dramatic, not loud, just final. I walked until my legs hurt, until the streetlights blurred together and the cold settled into my bones. I found a bench and sat there, clutching that small bag like it contained something valuable. It did not. Everything that mattered was still behind that door. But something shifted in me that night. Something quiet, but permanent. I stopped asking why. I stopped waiting for them to change. I stopped believing that love would look different if I just tried harder. Sitting there in the dark, I realized something that would shape every decision I made after that. No one was coming to save me. No one was going to explain it in a way that made sense. If I wanted control over my life, I would have to take it myself. That was the night I decided I would never be powerless again. I do not remember the first night I slept indoors again. What I do remember is the shift that happened inside me somewhere between hunger and exhaustion. Survival stopped being about getting through the next hour. It became a calculation, a strategy. I started watching people more closely, how they spoke, how they reacted, What made them hesitate? What made them trust? I learned quickly that the world outside was not kinder, but it was more predictable. And predictability meant leverage. I worked wherever I could. Cleaning tables, carrying boxes, washing dishes until my hands cracked from the chemicals. I learned to keep my head down and my ears open. People talk when they think you are invisible. That became my first advantage. I heard arguments about money, about contracts, about mistakes that cost thousands of dollars because someone failed to read a clause carefully. I did not understand everything at first, but I paid attention. Patterns started to form. Cause and effect. Action and consequence. Unlike my childhood, this system made sense. School was not a straight path. I moved between places, took classes when I could afford them, studied at night with borrowed books and dim lights that flickered just enough to remind me of where I came from. But this time, the darkness did not scare me. It sharpened me. I was not studying to pass tests. I was studying to understand power. The kind that could not be taken away by locking a door or withholding food. The kind that lived in knowledge, in systems, in the rules that governed everything people thought they controlled. Law found me before I fully understood it. Or maybe I found it. I remember sitting in a public library, flipping through a case file that someone had left behind. It was about a child. Neglect. Abuse. The words were clinical, almost detached, but I could feel the weight behind them. I read the arguments, the defense, the judgment. And for the first time, I saw something that felt like structure applied to chaos. There were definitions, boundaries, consequences. Not perfect, but real. I read that file 3 times that day. Then I found another, and another. That was the moment everything aligned. They called it discipline. The law called it something else. Something that carried weight. Something that could not be dismissed with a calm voice and a locked door. I realized then that what happened to me was not invisible. It had a name. It had a category. It had consequences. That realization did not bring comfort. It brought clarity. And clarity is far more dangerous. Getting into law school was not easy. There were gaps in my records, questions I could not fully answer, a past that did not fit neatly into forms. But I learned how to navigate systems by then. I knew what to say, what to leave out, how to present truth in a way that made people listen. I worked twice as hard as everyone around me, not because I wanted to be the best, but because failure was not an option I allowed myself to consider. Every case I studied, every statute I memorized, every argument I practiced became another layer between who I was and who I used to be. I chose my focus carefully. Child abuse law. Not because it was easy. It was not. The cases were heavy, the stories worse than anything I had lived through, but I understood them in a way others did not. I could see the gaps in arguments, the manipulation in language, the way abusers hid behind words like discipline, structure, necessity. I knew those words. I grew up inside them. That gave me an edge I never talked about. An instinct that guided me before logic even caught up. Over time, I built a reputation. Quiet at first, then undeniable. I did not lose cases I cared about. Not because I was aggressive, but because I was precise. I did not argue with emotion. I dismantled with evidence. Piece by piece. Calm. Controlled. Just like they taught me to be when I was a child. The difference was, now I was the one deciding where the pressure applied. But I never forgot them. Not for a second. I did not chase them. I did not confront them. I watched. From a distance. Carefully. Patiently. They aged. Their lives moved on in ways that almost looked normal from the outside. They became the kind of people who talked about values, about raising strong children, about discipline in a world that had become too soft. It would have been almost laughable if it was not so predictable. Then the opportunity came. Not dramatic. Not obvious. Just another case file on my desk. A child. Similar pattern. Isolation. Control. Language that felt too familiar. I read through the details slowly, my mind already connecting pieces before I reached the end.
The name stopped me.
For a moment, everything went quiet, not because I was surprised, but because the circle had finally closed. They were being accused, not by me,
Not yet.
by someone else. Another child who had lived through the same system they perfected years ago. I could have ignored it, passed it on, stayed detached. That would have been the easier choice. The safer one. But I did not come this far to step aside when it mattered. I requested the case. No hesitation. No explanation. Just a formal request that moved through the system like any other. On paper, it made sense. My experience. My record. My specialization. No one questioned it. Why would they? To them, it was just another assignment. To me, it was something else entirely. Preparation was different this time. More deliberate. I went through every detail of the case, not just as a lawyer, but as someone who had lived the blueprint. I knew where to look, what to ask, which details would seem small but carry the most weight when placed correctly. I revisited my own past, not emotionally, but analytically. What would have broken their argument if someone had seen it back then? What evidence would have been impossible to ignore?
And I built it. Carefully.
Quietly. A case that did not rely on anger or revenge, but on structure. On facts that could not be dismissed. On patterns that revealed truth without needing to shout it. They thought they were teaching strength all those years ago.
They were right.
Just not in the way they intended. They trained me to endure, to observe, to wait for the right moment. What they never understood was that they were also training the person who would one day stand in a courtroom and take everything they believed in apart with nothing but the truth. They thought they were building a stronger child. They were building their own prosecutor. The courtroom feels smaller as the trial begins in full. Not physically, but in the way tension compresses space, pulls every breath tighter, sharper. I stand as the proceedings resume, my notes already memorized, my strategy locked into place long before this day arrived. Across from me, they sit side by side, still holding on to the illusion that this is manageable, that this is something they can explain away with the same calm authority they used on me years ago. My mother leans toward her attorney, whispering something with a slight shake of her head, the same gesture she used whenever she dismissed my fear as weakness. My father keeps his gaze forward now, jaw clenched, his silence no longer powerful but defensive. I begin with structure. Always structure. The facts are introduced methodically, each piece of evidence placed with intention. Medical reports, school records, testimonies that outline a pattern too consistent to ignore. I do not rush. I let the weight build gradually, like pressure behind a closed door. The judge listens closely, occasionally glancing toward the defense, as if measuring their reactions against the growing clarity of the case. I can feel the shift in the room, subtle but undeniable. Doubt is no longer on our side. It has crossed the aisle. When it is time for cross-examination, I rise slowly. This is the moment where most cases are won or lost, not by volume, but by precision. My mother takes the stand first. She walks with controlled confidence, shoulders back, chin slightly raised. Even now, she believes she can manage perception. That has always been her strength. She sits, folds her hands, and looks toward the judge with practiced composure. For a brief second, her eyes flick toward me, but they pass over without recognition. I wonder if she feels anything at all. A flicker, a hesitation. If she does, she hides it well. I approach, stopping just close enough to hold her attention without invading her space. My voice is calm when I begin. I ask simple questions first, establishing rhythm, routine. Her responses come easily. She speaks about discipline, about responsibility, about preparing a child for a difficult world. The same script, the same language. It would almost be convincing if I had not lived inside it. I let her speak. I let her reinforce the very structure that will collapse around her. Then I shift. I introduce specific incidents.
Dates.
Details. Moments that cannot be softened by interpretation. Her tone changes slightly, just enough for someone trained to notice. She adjusts her posture. Her hands tighten together. I press further. I ask about isolation, about withholding food, about locking a child in a room for extended periods. She hesitates now, just for a second. Then she answers with the same phrase I have been waiting for. It was necessary. It was discipline. The words land in the room with more weight than she intends. I pause. Not long. Just enough. Then I reach for the evidence prepared for this exact moment. A recording. Old but clear. The judge allows it. The room falls silent as the audio begins. Her voice fills the space. Younger, sharper, unmistakable. This is discipline. You will thank us one day. I watch her face as the words echo back to her. The shift is immediate. Not dramatic, but real. Her eyes widen just slightly. Her breathing changes. She looks toward her attorney, then back toward me, searching now. For what I am not sure. Recognition. Denial. Something to anchor herself to. But there is nothing left to hold on to. I step closer, lowering my voice just enough to draw her focus completely. Do you still believe that statement is true? She does not answer immediately. The pause stretches, heavy, exposed. The judge leans forward. The defense looks unsettled. The control she once held so easily begins to fracture. I do not give her time to recover. I move to the next sequence. Patterns. Repetition. The systematic nature of the behavior. This is no longer about isolated incidents. This is structure. Intent. I lay it out piece by piece, each element reinforcing the next, until the argument becomes undeniable. The child in this case is not an exception. It is a continuation. Then I call my father. He takes the stand with less confidence. His silence, once a weapon, now feels like absence. I approach him the same way.
Calm.
Controlled. I ask about his role, his awareness, his decisions. He deflects at first, minimizing, reframing. He speaks about trust, about supporting his wife's methods, about believing it was for the child's benefit. I let him speak just enough to establish his position. Then I narrow the focus. Did you ever intervene? He hesitates. That hesitation says more than any answer. I press again. Did you ever stop it?
No.
The word is quiet, almost swallowed, but it lands with force. I nod slightly, acknowledging it, then step back. There is no need to push further. The truth is already exposed. The courtroom feels different now. The balance has shifted completely. What once looked like authority now appears as justification. What once sounded like discipline now echoes as harm. I return to my position, organizing the final pieces of the argument in my mind. Everything is aligned. Everything is ready. I take one last look at them. They're no longer composed. My mother's expression is strained, her confidence fractured. My father looks smaller somehow, as if the weight of what has been revealed has finally settled on him. And still they do not fully understand.
Not yet.
They see the case. They feel the pressure.
But they do not see me.
Not completely. I step forward again, the final phase of the trial beginning to take shape. My voice is steady, but something deeper sits beneath it now. Not anger, not even satisfaction. Something colder, something final. Because the truth is no longer just evidence. It is identity. And they're about to realize exactly who has been standing in front of them this entire time. I step forward for the final time, the room already leaning toward a conclusion that can no longer be avoided. My notes remain untouched in my hand. I do not need them. Every word I am about to say has lived inside me for years, sharpened, refined, stripped of everything unnecessary until only truth remains. I face the judge, but my awareness stays fixed on them, on the subtle shifts in their posture, the tension they can no longer hide. This is the moment they always believed they could control. They were wrong. I begin my closing argument with clarity, not volume. I speak about patterns, about consistency, about the difference between discipline and destruction. I do not accuse. I demonstrate. Each point connects seamlessly to the next, forming a structure they cannot dismantle because it is built from their own actions. I repeat their language back to the court, not to mock it, but to expose it. Words like strength, preparation, necessity. I let those words sit in the air, then I show what they truly created.
Fear.
Isolation. Damage that does not fade with time. The courtroom is silent. Even the smallest movements seem louder now. A chair shifts. Someone exhales too quickly. I continue, steady, controlled, allowing the weight of the case to settle exactly where it belongs. I speak about the child in this case, about the evidence that proves intent, about the responsibility that cannot be avoided simply because it was disguised as something else. I do not need to raise my voice. The truth carries itself. Then I pause. It is not hesitation. It is timing. I turn slightly, just enough to face them directly. For the first time since this trial began, I allow my focus to rest on them without restraint. My mother meets my eyes, confusion flickering beneath the surface of her composure. My father follows a second later, his expression tightening as something begins to connect, slowly, painfully. Do you recognize me now? The words are quiet, but they cut through the room with absolute precision. Everything stops. My mother's face drains of color, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound comes out. My father leans back slightly, his breath uneven, his eyes searching mine with a kind of desperation I have never seen before. Recognition arrives not as a sudden shock, but as a collapse. Piece by piece, the realization settles in. The voice, the structure, the way I speak, the way I look at them. I let the silence stretch. I am the child you locked away. No one moves. No one interrupts. The judge watches, but does not stop me. The weight of what has been revealed holds the entire room in place. My mother shakes her head faintly, as if denial can still undo what is happening. My father looks down, then back up, unable to escape it. I turn back to the judge, my composure intact, my voice returning to its steady rhythm. The prosecution requests the maximum sentence under the law. There is no anger in my tone, no satisfaction, just finality. The decision comes after what feels like both seconds and years. The judge's voice is measured, deliberate, outlining the charges, the findings, the conclusion that has now become unavoidable. Felony child abuse. Aggravated. Systematic. The sentence is handed down without hesitation. They do not react immediately. It takes a moment for reality to settle into something solid. Then it breaks. My mother's composure shatters first, her voice rising in disbelief, then desperation. My father says nothing, but his silence is no longer controlled. It is empty. Security steps forward. I watch as they are led away, not struggling, not resisting, just undone. The same people who once decided when I could speak, when I could eat, when I could exist. Now reduced to something smaller than they ever imagined. I do not follow them. I do not call out. I stand where I am until the room begins to empty, until the weight of the moment settles into something quieter, something almost still. Justice does not feel the way people think it does. It is not loud. It is not triumphant. It is precise. As I step out of the courtroom, the air feels different. Lighter, but not empty. Complete, but not comforting. There is one final thought that lingers, not as a question, but as something deeper. If pain creates strength, then what does justice create? I walk down the courthouse steps without looking back. The noise fades behind me, swallowed by distance, by time, by something that finally feels like an ending. For years, I thought closure would feel like relief, like something warm, something human. But it does not. It feels quiet, controlled, earned. I did not destroy them. I did not need to. I simply held up the truth and let it do what it was always meant to do. And maybe that is the real lesson. Discipline does not come from pain. It comes from choice. From knowing exactly who you are, even after everything tries to break you. So tell me if you were in my place, would you have done the same? If this story made you feel something, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think.